Good morning, everyone. Chris Peterson here. I'm going to give a few minutes of overview here at the beginning and as well at the end, but this is primarily going to be Sander's presentation this morning. Let's pick up with the workshop calendar. Based on the coaching session that we had last Thursday, you can see that we've made a few changes here. First of all, I've listed the coaching sessions. They will be Thursday mornings from 8 to 10. The assignments from 1 week will be due the following Monday, and at this point we have had one assignment handed in, but before we sign off today, Rashad is going to do an overview of how to use the assignment process and how to submit it, and so I think we're going to be able to get everybody up and working on the course website. The other major change here is that if you look towards the bottom, we're now going to do coaching sessions the week that includes Tuesday, April 29th, and then we will pick up now with May 6th being the presentation day, so that people have a week to finalize, polish up, be ready to present their material. Of course, today we're finding an innovation approach that fits, and remembering our innovation project creation model. We begin with the champion or champions, and again, these are the key people that are actually going to create and implement the project. The innovation idea itself and the problem or opportunity, and when we have those three things, then we have the project concept, and essentially after we run through today's workshop, we'll have the material assembled for that project concept, and then we move ahead to prove the potential of that concept. And for the most part, that's where the workshops are going to end, but it's not the end of the process of moving all the way forward with a full proposal and a launch. And again, last week we focused on the problem and opportunity. This week, the innovation idea, and then over the next 4 weeks, we'll move on to the various prove it drills and end up with workshop 7 and the presentation of the prospectuses. With that as a reminder of where we've been and where we're going, I turn it over to Sander. Good morning, Sander.
Well, good morning, Chris, and good morning, everybody else. A good afternoon here in the Netherlands, actually, and I hope you all can hear me. If that's not the case, I'll probably see a message in the chat box. As Chris just explained, I'm going to talk today about finding an innovation approach that fits. And from the university perspective, we have two objectives with this webinar. As many of you know, the university is working with what we call our innovation space, and in that innovation space we describe 4 types of innovation: capacity building, value adding, scaling up, and market invention. And I want to talk about each of these 4 strategies today. and I want to talk with you about whether the idea, your project ID, what does it focus on? Is it focusing primarily on technology, on what we call hardware? Is it about new skills and knowledge, what we call software, or is it much more about the organizational setting, platform development, network design, new business models? Because then it would be primarily about orgware. And what we hope to see in your project idea is that it really is always a combination of these three elements. So this is what I'm going to talk with you today about. But I wanted to start with what is innovation, and I've come across a number of different definitions of innovation, but I just used the one I found on Wikipedia. And Wikipedia says innovation is the application of better solutions that meet new requirements, unarticulated needs, or existing market needs. And I've highlighted a few words because I think they are crucial for this webinar. The first one is it's about application. It is not merely an idea on paper or in your head. It's really about testing the idea in real practice. It's not just about doing something new. No, it's about doing something better. I've once heard someone say management is doing better things, management is doing things better, innovation is doing better things, and I absolutely agree with that person. So it's really about finding better solutions, and in order to know whether it's better, again, you have to test it in practice. And the third component is that the innovation really needs to meet needs. And so you have to be very clear what those needs are that you're going to address with your project or with the innovation that you aspire. So recapturing, is innovation the same as doing something new or creating something new? No, it's much more than that. Also, it is important to realize that there is a distinction between what we call an invention, a new idea, an innovation, something that has been tested and applied in practice and is proven in practice, and the whole notion of a system innovation. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about system innovations in a moment. So innovation is the formulation of invention is the formulation of new ideas for products or processes, and innovation is again all about that practical application of new inventions into what we call marketable products or services. And you know that when you look at the schedule for our webinars, we're going to talk a lot about action experiments in one of the later workshops, because we feel that action perspective, that practical application, is really the key to innovation and also system innovation, and that it's not just having mere discussions with each other about what to do or what to do better, or doing analytical research or even research in practice. It's really about that practical application of a new idea. A little bit more vocabulary that you often come across when we talk about innovation. And in the traditional view of innovation, people always talk about two critical components, one being technology and one being the market or the markets. And as this diagram indicates, there are four types of innovations that people often talk about in the what I call the more traditional way. If you have an existing market and an existing technology, the innovations are incremental. It's incremental innovations. We're doing things a little bit better in the same setting, in the same market, using the same technology. If your market remains the same, but you have a new technology, then we call it a technological innovation. And in much of the literature, people tend to focus a lot on that technological innovation. That is our GSM, our the computer, but also LED lighting, things like that, all focusing on the technology component, technological innovation. But if you have existing technology, but you are able to enter a new market, you can also call it an innovation, but it's again a market innovation. And the real interesting part is when you have a new technology and are able to create a new market with or for that technology, then we are talking about a radical innovation. Still, this is primarily about two components, technology and markets. Another way of looking at it, and it's almost the same components, technology, progress, market, impact, but different words, but I want to mention them here because these are words that you hear a lot when people talk about innovation. Again, the biggest component in the lower left quadrant is incremental innovations. Same as we just talked about, existing markets, existing technology. What we call here breakthrough innovations are existing markets but with a new technology. Then we have the disruptive technology, disruptive innovations with new markets. And an existing technology that will really change the market, and the real game changers is where the innovation creates a new market with a lot of new technology. But as I've now said a few times, this is a traditional way of looking at innovation. It's a way of looking at it that you come across in many different domains, in many businesses, and the way government looks at innovation, especially here in the Netherlands. But I don't think that this really grasps what we are trying to do with the university and with the projects that we aspire. And then I want to come back to that notion of system innovation. Because I think that when we talk about sustainability as our real objective, if we want to improve the sustainability, we should really look at what type of innovation is then needed to do so. And as this chart shows, that the sustainability impact of just product improvement is not very much. It becomes a little bit better if you're not just tweaking your product a little bit, but you are completely redesigning your product. Then you can do something better instead of just doing things a little bit better. When you're innovating your function, that again has a much bigger impact for sustainability. But the biggest impact for sustainability is for system innovations. And I like this quote from Bill Gates. You probably all heard of the man, and he once said that if we are going to change people's lives, we need another level of innovation, not just technology innovation, but system innovation. So let me share with you what we tend to call system innovation. System innovation really aspires to change something not just on a market or not just on a product, but on the real system. And as the title of our whole series of webinars says, we are trying to impact our Metro Ag, Metro Food system. So systems innovations try to create an impact, a systemic impact, in both social and technical dimensions. And social dimensions being values of consumers, of citizens, regulations that we have to attend to, attitudes of people, but also the technical dimensions, infrastructure, technology, tools, production processes, etc. And most importantly, and I can't underline that enough, is that it's about the relationships between them. That is what makes the system, and that's also what keeps a system in place. And if you want to tweak that system, it's not enough to just use one of the leverage that are, but you have to work at all of them often at the same time. Sorry, I do see a question in the chat box from Renee. Good morning, Renee. Say more about what function innovation was. It was my previous slide. Sorry, I didn't see that that comment before. Function innovation is really trying to do something new, and I will share a little bit with you one of the projects of Transform, the Green Care project, and Chris said a little bit about it in his previous presentation. In the Green Care project, the farmers around Amsterdam decided to do something completely new, a new function, namely offering care on on their farms, and that was a completely new function. And because they did something completely new in terms of function, the impact in terms of sustainability was much bigger. But I'll come back to that example later on in my presentation. Also true for system innovation is that it may include elements or combination of all types of previous mentioned innovations. Products innovations, process innovations, organizational innovations, social innovations, marketing innovations. And the other key component is that those innovations are developed and implemented by many actors. If I go back to that first definition at Wikipedia, it says it was a better solution, and it was meeting needs. Well, it must, if it has to meet the needs of the system, it by definition involves many actors, and all the actors should help test this notion and test this idea, and give feedback whether this is really better. If I put them in an order, the first one, invention, being the new technical idea, new knowledge, new hardware, or a procedure. Innovation, really being about valorization of inventions in the market or in the marketplace. System innovations being one or more innovations that together leads to shifting relations between stakeholders to a new system. And if we go even one step higher up the chain, we can talk about a transition, and a transition would be a number of related system innovations that lead to a complex change in our society. Organizing transitions is very difficult. There's a whole body of literature about transition management, but it's really about working on individual innovations that together have the potential to impact the system, and that togetherness is really organized by creating connectivity between these different innovations and learning from and between these different innovations, and then you have the ability to really contribute to a transition. A little bit more about innovation literature, because another component that you often see in innovation literature is people talking about the value chain. And I've put on a picture from Michael Porter, a renowned economist from Harvard, who wrote a very trend-setting article about that value chain. And his definition of innovation is developing a unique value proposition in a unique value chain. And the graphic below describes that value chain with the very traditional, again, components or activities of logistics, operations, outbound logistics, marketing and sales and services, and support activities that really help create strength in that value chain and link all the different shackles in that chain. This is still a way of looking at innovation that is dominant in business, and for good reason, because business has control over their value chain, or at least they try to have and create control over their value chain, and value chain orchestration or value chain coordination are, at least in Europe, still topics that are hot on the literature lists of many business literature. But it is about only business components here. And when you think about this definition and this schematic of the value chain, and you think back about that notion of trying to impact our system, and finding an innovation approach that would benefit sustainability, then maybe this definition is not good enough, and this schematic is not good enough. So I've tried to revisit Michael Porter, and the first thing that came to mind for me is that you need to see the whole picture. to realize effective system change. And that whole picture is much broader than just your traditional value chain. And for many businesses, for many corporations, they don't even see the whole value chain. They just see that part of the chain right in front of them and directly after them, because value chains, especially in food and ag, are very, very complex and for a large part very, very globalized. So seeing the whole picture is difficult in that sense, but seeing the whole picture is also critical if it comes to system innovations. Another notion that struck me is that it can never be about just one value. Michael Porter talks about a value proposition. But if we just learn that in system innovation it's always about multiple stakeholders that together form the system, and that together have to prove that an innovation really performs better in that sense and in that system, it is critically important that we focus on more than just one value. And we have to take into account that the values of stakeholders will differ. From stakeholder to stakeholder, but also from location to location and also in time. I am of the strong belief that sustainability is not something that you can measure, that there's a sort of an ultimate sustainable status other than 0 degrees Kelvin where everything is frozen and stands still. But sustainability also is a dynamic concept. And a concept that incorporates a lot of values, and what values are important in your project really is being defined by your context and the stakeholders around your project. My third notion is that outside that traditional value chain, there are a lot of stakeholders. Stakeholders that are at least as important as the traditional value chain stakeholders. Governments that with their rules and regulations can make or break an innovation. Societal groups that have ambition to have influence in what's happening in their situation, in their environment, and want to put their values high on the political agenda, but also on the agenda of businesses. Just citizens, but also think about funders that have values. So that value chain approach is far too narrow to really think about system innovation, and it is critically important to also involve the stakeholders outside that traditional value chain if we're looking for an innovation approach that fits system innovation. So if I were to revise Porter, I would say that system innovation is developing a unique connected value proposition in a unique value network. Connected values, it is really trying to find a new balance, incorporating different values of different stakeholders in one proposition. You can only make that proposition if you have a unique value network where all these stakeholders are present and are expressing what values matter to them most or particular. And hello Nairobi, I see you are all online. Great to have you joining our webinar. It's a bit vague maybe this picture, but I like the way that an organization in the UK thought about system innovation, and it gives it also a good impression that if it comes to system innovation, you're never done, because you can change the system, but this will create a new opportunity, or maybe even a new problem that you can work on and keep constantly improving it. But I like this this picture, even though it's a bit vague. Sorry for that. So it doesn't really matter where we start in this cycle, but let's start at the top. See the whole picture. Second step, identify connections between the different parts of the system. who is related to who, and via what incentives. Are there people really doing things completely alone, or are they dependent from others? How do we engage different perspectives of all these different parts of the systems? Fourth step, recognize that all models are wrong, but some are useful. Chris can tell you a lot about what knowledge is needed for these types of processes. But I think the common understanding is that we are learning our way to a new solution, and we can and we should use all knowledge available and all models available, but most likely we will have to create the new knowledge together that is relevant for our context, our situation, our project, and only by creating that knowledge together we can come up with a better solution. It's also important to consider different timescales, long-term, short-term. We have to seek to make effective interventions by understanding patterns in the system, and that is something that we're going to talk a lot about with monitoring and reflection. And the essence is to constantly keep learning about the system and how to be effective in this. You will say, if you look at this, this is more a process than a project approach. And if you say that, you are absolutely right. One of the key learnings in Transform, when we started doing our projects, we had at first quite a traditional approach to project and our project management. We asked all our projects to write a project plan in advance and sketch out in detail, in very detailed work packages, what they were going to do in their projects to deliver the aspired outcomes. But had we only seen this picture before, we would have realized that there's nothing wrong with having an ambition to doing something new, your innovative idea. But the road towards that idea, giving all these notions about how to find to really work on system innovation, it's more an expedition than a complete and detailed tour. So it's really about taking one step together, evaluating where we are, seeing what new opportunities arise or what roads are being blocked, and looking at what obstacles we encounter and how we can overcome these obstacles, incorporating new knowledge, incorporating new perspectives that will change the way we look at our aspired RD or towards our project team, and changing permanently and learning constantly. So at the end of Transform, looking back, we said yes. I think after a year in Transform, we sort of did away with the traditional project management approach, and we really started to look at all our projects as processes. Not an easy task, because Transform was granted quite a large pot of money from the Dutch government, and the Dutch government wanted Transform to be very specific about where we spend our money on, where we invested our money in. And they had a hard time in understanding that we said, well, yeah, we're investing it in processes, and maybe we can even call these processes expeditions. That was quite a tough thing for our government bureaucrats to get in between or get in their head and be working with it. But I strongly believe that that this process approach is what made the success of many of our projects, instead of trying to figure things out at the start of the project, trying to simplify your reality, trying to do away with a lot of the complexity that surrounds your project, and trying to make it manageable, but at the same time taking for granted that the result would be far less optimal. And again, a process approach like this, some people might scare away for it, saying, this is going to take a lot of time, and will it ever create the results we hope for? But our our belief is and our experience is that it will create better results and much more robust results, and that it will actually do not cost more time, because there will be far less opposition against any idea that is created in a way like this, and it's also, like I said, much more robust, so it will be able to survive for a far longer time in the system. I talked about values, and it's important to realize that, and I said it already in one of the previous slides, that there are different values that drive our different stakeholders. Businesses all, in the end, aim for continuity. Not just profit, but continuity. And profit is of course, an important means to that end. Government is always interested in a power position. How do we stay in power? How do we make sure our politicians stay in power? And how do we prevent others to become in power? Academia, main value driver is peer recognition. You want to be recognized for that unique piece of research that you did, and that is what drives academia in the end. And of course, publicizing about your research is a very important instrument for that. And for societal groups, it's really about their place on the agenda. Renee is asking, say more about continuity. Well, I think what a business wants to do is to keep in business. Making, I think, more and more businesses are understanding that making a short-term profit but losing in the long term is not a good business model, and that is why corporate social responsibility, shared value development are now the still very important drivers in the business community, because in the end what business wants is to remain in business, and you will only remain in business if you are able to produce black figures, if you're able to make a profit. But I do believe that continuity is the main driver for business. With having said all this about innovation, about system innovation, about the need for to approach this as a process instead of a project, and talking about the values of the different type of stakeholders, I want to share with you 3 examples of transform projects. And the first one is an example from Ron Deal, eggs. And the innovation approach that Ron Deal took is that of value adding. I'm going to try to show you in a moment a video clip. I'm going to give Rashad the heads up that in a few slides he needs to start that video. But if we're talking about value adding, and especially in the case of Ron Deal, what they encountered is that if you're talking about value adding, the interesting and the very difficult part is to also touch upon those intangible values. Of course, for a company, and Ron Deal is a laying hen system, so they're producing eggs. It's easier to talk about all those tangible values, especially economic capital. But they were, especially given the situation and the public debate about the way we keep our livestock in the Netherlands and the way we keep our laying hens, they had to find a way to make those intangible values much more tangible. And then we are talking about trust and relief, authenticity, respect, in addition to animal welfare, the way it's integrated in the environment and things like that. And I believe that Ron Deal, the people from Ron Deal, did an excellent job in making those intangible values really matter, and shaping their business case and their innovation approach about those values. Before we start that video, I want to give you a little bit of background about the Dutch laying hen sector. and because I do realize that this might differ from the ones in Detroit or in Nairobi or in Joburg or in Singapore. Um, the Dutch laying hen sector is under huge pressure. Societal pressure, governmental pressure, and economic pressure. The EU ordered a ban on cage systems. It's in effect by now, and consumers demand animal comfort and animal welfare. At the same time, there is very, very, very fierce competition. Competition on low prices. And it also means that the margins on eggs are extremely low. We also see that as the economy of scale continues, because of those low prices and low margin, most innovation is focused towards industrial agriculture, producing even more eggs at an even lower cost. But at the same time, and that comes back to that societal pressure, that most frequent biosecurity scares, avian influenza, things like that, focus popular opinion away from industrial agriculture. And that was only being enforced by the whole debate about animal comfort and animal welfare. And these are the images that are still reality in many countries, including the Netherlands. Cage systems where the laying hen really is only a production factor, and it's hardly seen upon as an animal. No daylight, no natural materials, all stainless steel and conveyor belts, and this was the situation where a few researchers from Wageningen University and Research Center and a few companies from that laying hen sector started out with, and they sat together and said, but what now? If the chickens designed the hen house, how would a hen house look then? And they formed a team, an initial research team, and they went looking for that golden egg, namely a hen house that is highly sustainable, not only in the sense of environmental performance, for instance, what to do with CO2 and methane and things like that, not only in terms of the way it is designed and whether it fits in the landscape, not only in terms of can we make it very animal friendly with a high animal comfort level, but also sustainable in the sense of making this profitable, because it's one thing to design a very interesting hen house, but they said we want to apply that idea because only then we would be able to realize a really better solution that meets those requirements and needs of modern day consumers and citizens. Well, I've got a video now from the roundel, and again the roundel is a housing system, but maybe it's much more than that, but I've got a 1-minute video from Wageningen University. The video was produced a few years ago, and it focuses on that research project, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about what happened after that research project. But first I'm going to ask Rashad whether he can start this video clip.
Good morning. I'm going to share my screen and play it. So there's going to be a little brief transition, so if you can just bear with me here. can't see it. I think the lag was a little too much in order for the video to keep up. I did post. Let me go ahead and if you look in the bottom left corner of the screen here, I posted the links for those videos. So it's probably best if you copy and paste those in your own browsers, and let's do it that way. I think that's the cleanest way. So I'll resume the presentation here. And what you all can do is, if you just indicate when you're done watching the video in the chat, that'll give us an idea of where everyone is.
Okay, I think that almost everybody has seen the video clip or is letting us know that they're experiencing delays, so they'll watch it later. I'll resume my presentation. So what you saw or will see in that video is the approach that Wageningen University took together with a few stakeholders from that traditional laying hen sector to come up with a new design, underline design for a hen house, a sustainable hen house. And they made two designs, one being the rondel, the second one being the plantation. And they really looked at all the available data and information in terms of what does an animal need to be a very happy chicken in a system like this. And it was a well-received report. But at the same time, people said they were very intrigued by this housing system, and people said, wouldn't it be great if we would be able to realize this system in practice, that we could really apply the ID. But then the first throwbacks came, and people said, well, maybe it is not just about the housing system. Maybe it is about innovation all along the chain. It's not just about the production, but it's also about contracting. Because we want to know that we are able to sell all the eggs to the market, or the next part of our value chain. Because otherwise we will never be able to make this investment. It's also about logistics. This is still a very small scale, a relatively small scale housing system, 30,000 laying hens in 5 compartments. 30,000 is for many of the countries around the world a really small system. We have systems in the Netherlands with more than 1 million chicken. So logistics is an interesting challenge then, if you want to be able to sell the eggs in traditional retail outlets, in traditional supermarkets. And they also said, well, if we want to make a unique brand, we should stand out on that shelf where almost all the packaging is the same. And they said we have to look at packaging, and we have to find a way to do our marketing in a different way. So the next step after that initial design of the system was to think along that value chain, and they were able to come up with all sorts of solutions for that value chain. I'm going to show a few pictures about what happened in the rest of the project. Here you see an aerial picture of the first rondeel really being built. I don't know where there is a so this is a picture of the first rondeel being built. You see the round shape of the rondeel. It's almost a hub and spokes model, and in each of the compartments 6,000 laying hens are being kept. The middle compartment of the rondeel is for general purposes. There's a small packaging station there where one farmer, this whole system is designed to be managed by one farmer's family. So in the middle section, the farmer is doing the packaging of the eggs. There's also a conference room there, and that's being rented out to a lot of organizations and businesses around this system that like that housing system, because it's so innovative and so new, and they are eager to keep their meetings there. You see that it's quite an open system. It's covered. But it's not covered as a traditional industrial system. This is quite an open system, allowing daylight. There's a wooden fringe around it, and there's artificial grass. So it's quite an interesting design. The second picture I want to show is the launch of the first rondeel eggs, and you see here the basket in which the eggs are being sold, and the guy here giving thumbs up to the rondeel eggs is the commercial director of Ahold, the supermarket chain responsible for all the Albert Heijn stores in the Netherlands, and that's by far the biggest supermarket chain in the Netherlands. And I talked about that contracting. Albert Heijn has a puur en eerlijk, we call it in Dutch, a pure and fair label for sort of a house brand, and they have a lot of products under that label that are sustainable or local, or at least performing better, and they adopted the rondeel eggs also under that label. And you see that the packaging is made of coconut fiber. And another interesting distinction is that almost all packages in the Netherlands are rectangular, containing 6, 12 or 24 eggs, and this one contains 7 and it is round, and the marketing ID behind it is 1 egg a day, so also new. And here you see the shelf, and it's proof of what I just said. You see all sorts of rectangular boxes there containing 6 or 12 eggs. And you see our former Minister of Agriculture, that's the lady on the left, with the Rondeal eggs, and she too was very enthusiastic about this ID. But these are all pictures of the end result. The end result in terms of a new housing system being built, of a new contract being signed, and of the minister being very proud of a product on the shelf in the supermarket. So what is it then that makes Rondeal so unique? Is it that new technological design? And again, a few pictures of the Rondeal. You see the chickens walking in wood chips on the front. That's what we call the wooden fringe. There's no roof on top of that. There's only a net on top of that. From that wooden fringe they can go into the building, and the first part of that building where you see that green grass, that's actually artificial grass, is being covered by a roof. And as you know that in natural life, chickens are birds that are being preyed upon, so they don't like being in the open. Actually, they want to be able to move inside as soon as any threat comes over. And the first Rondeal was being built quite close to an airport, and every airplane that flew over made the whole flock of chicken run back inside and abandon that wooden fringe. So interesting to see that they were also starting to behave more naturally. And the third picture is of the spokes, and the spokes actually are the night quarters of the chicken, and the night quarters are could be closed off by a rollaway fence or rollaway wall, and as soon as daybreak the wall would roll up, and when the chickens needed to go to bed, the wall would roll down, and the chickens really moved inside and outside by themselves. But is it that new technological design that made Rondeal unique? Yes, for sure. What also made them unique, and I talked a lot about it, so I'm gonna skip this one quickly, is that unique packaging and marketing. Again, the picture of at the left, the coconut fiber, and right, an even newer packaging made from starch. And what also makes it unique is its transparency, where a lot of people oppose more industrial forms of farming because it's such a black box, because it's always a completely closed off stable where you can't even look inside, where there's no daylight inside. The Rondeal is almost the complete opposite. On the first picture on the left, you see a yellow sign saying bezoekers, that's Dutch for visitors. You are actively being welcomed as a visitor to the Rondeal. The farmers are very proud of it, and they are eager to show it to you. So the Rondeal is open 24 hours, 7 days a week for visitors. And so you can always come in and have a look. You can, as you see on the second picture, walk around, and it's fun to interact with those chicken, and you see again that wooden fringe with wood chips, and after that the green artificial grass. And to have an even closer interaction with the chicken, you can go inside the building and walk in a visitor's tunnel, and that's the picture on the right, where you are on eye height with the chicken, and the chickens look you in the eye and have that look upon their face saying, "What are you doing here, 2 foot?" A very fun experience to see it, but also one that's not only fun. This is really centered to the whole business case, because we talked about those intangible values, and transparency and trust were values that the people from the Rondeal thought of very highly, and said, if we want to do something different, if we want to persuade our consumers to buy Rondeal because they trust it, then we have to show them everything, and that's why they invested in facilities like this. So yes, the transparency also makes Rondeal unique. I've put on an infographic of the Rondeal. It has a few dimensions on it, maybe for you to look upon later. But I want to focus on the top part of it, where we say a little bit about three of the key stakeholders. The poultry farmer first. This is a system that it was, as I said, designed to be operated by one farmer's family. A farmer and his wife, or a farmer and his son, can run this operation. That's how it's dimensioned. It's a very nice environment to live in. It's automated for a large part, but it has also a lot of opportunity to interact with your animals, and to also do other type of activities, like renting out that office space of that meeting room. The retail was another important sector, because they guaranteed the sales of Rondeal eggs for 2 years. Because they were so intrigued by this concept, that they say, we are willing to sign a contract where we guarantee the sale of Rondeal eggs. And the interesting part is that it is a fixed price, but with only the only not fixed component of that price is for the cost of feed. So the price is being changed based upon the price of the feed, and that's a unique contract in the Netherlands to be able to sign this. It's also a contract that is very beneficial for the poultry farmer, but it's also beneficial for the retailer. It has exclusivity, so Albert Heijn is the only supermarket to sell and allowed to sell Rondeal eggs, and they were given, of course, also the guarantee of a stable supply, and because of that contract, the farmer could guarantee on that supply. And the consumer is better off too, because they get a real sustainable egg. To the extent that the egg received 3 stars, the maximum score, from our Animal Protection Foundation. And the interesting part is that that star system was originally designed to only give its 3 stars to complete organic production. Rondeal is not organic. They explicitly positioned themselves in between industrial egg production and organic production, because as I said, if we want to do it also organically, we would really be the most expensive egg in the market, and we would probably will not have enough revenues to make this business case work. So they positioned themselves just below the organic farmers, and that caused an interesting discussion with the people from the Animal Protection Foundation, because they said, well, actually you did everything to have the chickens perform naturally, and we must admit that in some parts it's even better than an organic system. And the only part that you are not doing is provide the chicken with organic feed. But hey, in terms of all the other things, your scoring is far better than some of the organic farms in the Netherlands. So they really changed their star system and awarded 3 stars to the Rondeal. It also has the Milieukeur Eco label, because there's very little pollution. There's a natural filter in there. So it's also, in terms of emissions and energy consumption, it's a very environmental friendly system. So again, what makes this unique? The participatory research, where that video is about, and how the researchers included all the stakeholders. Yes. The technological design, for sure. This is really innovative in that sense. The attractive packaging, yeah. Ron Deal stands out on the shelf. Its environmental performance, there is no stable system or housing system for chicken that has better environmental performance. The transparency to consumers, 24/7, being able to walk in, being very open to consumers, welcoming them on and in your facility, unique. And the innovative business case, including all those contracts, yes, that is also unique. But what a lot of people do not see is that this was only possible because of the cooperation between very, very unlikely allies, and the innovation approach that these allies, these different stakeholders, took together. Because what did they do? They turned away from a cost price strategy and focused on value creation on all three P's. They really looked about what do we have to do to create a better performance in terms of our people values, in terms of animal comfort that's being valued highly by consumers in the Netherlands, but also the way the system fits in the landscape. In terms of transparency, they also looked at the planet values, emissions, energy consumptions, the materials they used for packaging, and how they handled logistics. So they really focused on value creation on all three P's. They mapped out which stakeholders could make or break this new value proposition. And they included all these stakeholders in trying to move the idea from an idea on paper to a tested and applied innovation in practice. It does not mean that all the stakeholders also stayed on board. For instance, the packaging company that they originally talked to, and Salome, I hope I have answered your question about what are the three P's. Those are the P's of people, planet, and profit, the three domains of sustainability. So profit focusing on economic aspects, planet focusing on all the environmental aspects, and people focusing on all the societal aspects of a project. Back to those stakeholders, not all the stakeholders stayed on board for the full process, and that packaging company that they originally included in their project team turned out to be a big obstacle, because that packaging company had just invested in new packaging instruments that were only able to produce rectangular boxes for 6 eggs. So the whole idea of making a more attractive packaging failed as long as that stakeholder was part of their project team. So they also had to say goodbye to a few stakeholders. But that didn't change the idea that they invited their friends and their enemies to help them design this whole system and build this whole system, and especially including their enemies. And think about our Society for the Protection of Animals, for instance. That's a society, an NGO that was able that their normal behavior is to not get involved in a project, but only comment from the sideline what a project did not do good enough. And because of good personal relations with people from that NGO changed its behavior and said, okay, we are willing to come work with you and change our criticism at the end to design criteria during the process, and we want to work with you to really shape this in another way. And of course the promise was to them that they would do their utmost best to use all these design criteria to create the design of the Ron Deal, and also to create the final Ron Deal. But it was critically important that it was not only a design. what they said is, we want to turn this design into a viable business case. This is not to be an exercise on paper or in theory. We want to build this in real life, and we want to make this a success. So they needed to look at what will make this a viable business case. And so they also needed to look in terms of what investments what's the return on the investments we can make. So what is a wise investment to make? And sometimes this meant that for the first Ron deal build, they had to do some concessions in terms of, for instance, the materials being used, or the fact that they decided not to use organic feed. Because they were working so closely with all these stakeholders, even the most radical stakeholders, like that Society for the Protection of Animals, sort of recognized that we can aim for the best, but if we keep aiming for the best, we will probably never make progress. So they were willing to settle for a little bit less, but still a huge jump in terms of sustainability performance. And they said, okay, if we are still able to do all this, then we take, for now, we accept that you will not be using organic feed. So even going back into or taking a somewhat lower level of ambition for some of the values did not result in the coalition falling apart, and this was also quite unique. So they really learned from each other about what was needed to make the business case a success. And even the people from the Society of the Protection of Animals fully recognized that, of course, these farmers needed to make a profit and needed to stay in business, and we needed to prove that this system worked, and that that new values were being created, and that the system performed much better. And after the first Ron deal was built, the second Ron deal came to life, and that second Ron deal already had a lot of changes in terms of materials being used, and new additions to the system that even again improved the sustainability performance of that system. And a final remark of their innovation approach is that they invested, all of the stakeholders invested in their own, I call it, currency to jointly build the success. Of course, it was business that invested in terms of money. They built the first Ron deal and they paid for it. Government gave a little bit of subsidy to the first Ron deal, but also changed a few of the old rules regarding the, for instance, how to deal with chicken manure, and what we call air washers, and they sort of put some of those rules out of work to make this innovation work. The NGOs that were involved, they also invested in their own currency to build this success, because the most interesting thing that happened is when Ron deal was launched, an NGO paid for commercials on public radio and on public television advocating how good the Ron deal was. That has never been shown before. All the commercials that NGOs put on radio were always negative, and this was the first positive campaign paid for by an NGO supporting a private business. And I see Renee asking to know what the resistance was to using organic feed. Well, the resistance was nothing more than it was more expensive, and the cost price of the egg would go up, the margin would go down, because they thought that they could not position the egg in a different price category, and they said we will have much lower returns when we do this, and it will probably mean that the Rondeal will fail. It is still the ambition of the people of Rondeal to change to organic feed in due time. But right now they're saying if we're doing this now, we will kill Rondeal, because we have to first now create the brand, and I think it's a strong brand by now, and that will give us opportunities for making the next steps in terms of sustainability. Again, I have a very cool picture here, but this is a video. I shot it from the visitors tunnel of Rondeal to close off this this part of the Rondeal. This is not on YouTube.
Actually, uploaded that video to YouTube. Here. The link is available in the news.
Yeah, go ahead, Rashad. Okay. Well, thanks, Rashad. Then you can see it. It's just a very cool video to see all these chickens, and it's, of course, you see only one of the 5 components of the Rondeal. You see them walking around in the wooden fringe where all the wood chips are. You see them on the artificial grass. You see them taking a dust bath, and you see how they really perform like they would in nature. So I like it a lot, just to give you an impression. Are there any questions regarding Rondeal before we move to other examples of transform projects? I don't see anyone typing, so I'll move to the lessons. The lessons from Rondeal was that relevant values really need translation to become tangible, and it was not easy for the project team to do this. But the success of Rondeal is the fact that they were able to add values to a very traditional project. If you look at the Rondeal egg, it's still an egg. You can't make a distinction between a Rondeal egg and an otherwise produced egg. But they loaded that egg with a lot of extra values, and if you're buying a Rondeal egg, and all the marketeers will say, well, that's Stane, you're buying a story, of course, and you're buying that that experience that is on that second video clip.
Yes, I wanted to ask.
I see someone. John, you raised your hand.
It seems like a good learning opportunity for area schools to come in and learn about, perhaps say that the history of egg production and how Rondeal is a response to these social forces, such as the call for animal welfare and so on. It seems like a great way to integrate the multi-stakeholder perspective in general, just through a kind of an educational component that's built in. And so my question is that something that has either been done or is being considered?
Yes, thanks, John, for that question. Yes, that is being done. As I said, Rondeal is always open to the public. It's quite popular for schools to go there. There are a few info panels there. There's always a video running about the Rondeal. So they are investing a lot in that, but they've tried to do it in a way that it doesn't burden the farmer, because he still needs to manage that facility, and he can't be the one be hosting a lot of school kids there. But what you do see often is that the farmer's wife takes responsibility for that. So in that sense, also a social innovation maybe. So yes, a lot of education is taking place, and I have seen Rondeal in a lot of TV programs, educational TV programs for kids also. So I think they do get a lot of exposure, and it's very popular in that sense. So you're absolutely right with your question. Back to the lessons from, I see Renee. Share a little bit about the work translating values, connect values, address value conflicts. Yeah, and Renee, this is not an easy question because people tend to not talk easily about their values. They tend to talk easily about their interests or their positions. So it really requires a very in-depth process between these stakeholders. So it's not just organizing one session saying, okay, this session we're going to talk about our values, we're going to map them out, and then we're done. Having people talk about their values requires to trust first, because even for a farmer or someone from the construction company building these rondeels, not talking about their own interest, but saying, for me it is also important that an animal feels happy in my system, is not something that will easily happen. So it requires trust at first. It requires real relationship, and what they, for instance, did with this team is visit all the organizations of their stakeholders. So they the first session was probably at the university. The second session was in the stable of the farmer being involved. The third session was at the construction side of one of these housing system builders. So they try to, as a team, become more acquainted with their team members, with what drives them, what their concerns are. One of the farmers shared a story that he was very much afraid of being out of business because of the expanding city next to him, and the many consumers complaining about odor and nuisance in other regards to other nuisances. And they use stories like that to really map out these values. By doing so, they were also able to connect these values, and saying, but wait, if we are able to create a system that has far less odor and looks much better in the landscape, it will probably be an attractor for like John just said, education, and it will create in much more support from your local community than if you are just building a next traditional housing system. And it might also mean that we are able to ask for a higher price, and we would create buy-in from NGOs, and this is the way how they connected values. And value conflicts, of course there were value conflicts, like the example I just used where the Society for Protection of Animals actually at first demanded that they would use organic feed. But by being in this constant dialogue and learning about what they could do and what couldn't be done or couldn't be done just yet, they were able to prevent these value conflicts turning into complete standstills. So I hope that helped. And Catherine is asking, how long did that process take? That is the process of engaging all stakeholders. Yes, you're absolutely right. That is the process of engaging all stakeholders. I think that engaging all stakeholders is not one of the steps you take in the process, but that is your process. The design of the round deal, the original design, so the part that the university did, took about a year. Turning the idea on paper into a real business case, and until the opening of the first round deals table took about 3 years. And all the people saying we were very, very happy to make that commitment, but only because we saw that during that process, it is of course 3 years is long, not if you look at other business development trajectories, but 3 years is long. But they were really always willing to keep making that commitment to the process because they saw the progress they were making. And in the end, of course, it was very everyone was really excited to see whether they would, for instance, be able to raise all the money needed to build that first Ron deal. And that was not something that was clear from the outset. So that was only, I think they were able to raise that money also with loans with the bank because they had such a good story. So back to the lessons. Talk to your adversaries to find out what the real relevant issues are and keep them on that agenda. Don't put them on a list and park them, but make sure that those values form your agenda. What they also learned is a system like Rondeal would never have been built if they were just tweaking it a little bit. An innovation like this, an innovation like that has value adding, is most successful if it redesigns the chain. They really built their traditional value chain, maybe better to say they really built their value network from scratch, looking for the right partners, looking for those that were in a position to really help build this and were willing together to take commitment and ownership for this. Renee is asking, how did you address managing expectation of funders investors over a 3 to 4 year period? Just being very, very keen on their values, because a funder and an investor, of course, he has to see progress and he has to believe in it. But the same goes for the companies that were involved. They were making an upfront investment in this, and of course, there's always this check whether do I still believe that there will be a return on this investment, or is it better to quit now and take my losses? So the answer, even though it's maybe not what you're looking for, is it's in the quality of the process. That is how you manage the expectations. And what really helped is, and we will talk about that in another workshop, that monitoring and reflection that we did in the process also helped in addressing those concerns. It's easy to keep these concerns under the table, or if they come up, to see them as a big issue. But through our monitoring and reflection, they were constantly part of the innovation management, so to speak. The last lesson here is that co-creation also proved to be a very powerful marketing instrument. The story I shared with you, that Society for the Protection of Animals paid for the commercials on public radio, based on the money they get from their supporters, is unique in that sense, and it showed that all the stakeholders took commitment for the success of Rondeal. It was really co-created, it was co-owned even in that sense, and that's why still so many people are proud of Rondeal. I am looking at my clock, and I want to move to the second approach that we've seen in Transform, because we've done many projects. We did 30 projects in the Netherlands. Rondeal was only one of them. We had others who took a similar kind of approach as Rondeal. We had others who tried to organize a new market, and I want to talk with you about Green Care. Because what Green Care did with the farmers in Green Care, those were all farmers around the city of Amsterdam. That's our capital, and Amsterdam is surrounded by a green agricultural ring, and mainly dairy farming there. But it's a ring. It's a green ring, being very much under urban pressure. A lot of urban dwellers use it for recreation, so they especially like the landscape. But at the same time, the whole dynamics in the agriculture sector and the dairy sector push the farmers to even larger scale production, more industrial production. So they were sort of caught in between, saying if we want to make a better profit, we should scale up, but if we want to keep our neighbors happy, then we have to keep doing what we're doing, but then we would make a loss. So how can we do this? And instead of just changing a little bit what they did and just starting an on-farm shop, for instance, they said, now we can do something different. And that the different idea was sparked by a few farmers' wives that had a medical education. They were trained nurses and doctors, and there was also someone working with elderly people and on reintegration. And somewhere they read this notion that a green environment and a green agricultural environment can be very therapeutical for people in need of sort of care, and especially for people that needed to reintegrate into a society. The on-farm work could be very beneficial for their reintegration process. So instead of adding values to the milk they produce, or selling milk or cheese on their farm, they decided to tap into a whole new market, and they developed the concept of green care farming, care arrangements on the farm for the elderly, people from the city, people with burnouts, and former drug addicts. I have a video ready for you. The link is in the bottom right corner under notes 4. If you see there the link Green Care, it's about a 5-minute video, and I would ask you to look Please do let me know when you're done watching that video clip by typing in the Dropbox that you're done. Okay, I see that almost everybody is done now, and I also see that my next slide is very hard to read. I hope what you've seen in the clip is that the people of Landseide, of Green Care, are really doing something completely new that is very much linked to their aquaculture practice, but is really aiming at a completely new market. It's also clear that in order to do this, they had to become to almost learn a new job. So it had a lot to do with organizing in this farmer community the right skills to be able to make this business idea a success. It also required a lot of new partners that had nothing to do with the traditional value chain in which these farmers were operating. They had to talk with care insurers, with care institutes, with urban services, with organizations for the elderly or people with drug behavior problems. This really required something completely new. But it is a big success. That has a lot to do with the way that care is being organized and paid for in the Netherlands. So it's not a system that's that you can easily copy paste to a new city or a new country. But it is a success. I think there were over 450 clients in 2012. Right now there are 900 clients, and the average extra income for the farmer, so that's on top of the income they get from their aquaculture practice, is between 3,000 and 180,000 euros annually. So that's really a big new income for these farmers. So it's really a completely new market, a completely new business case. Very interesting, because they of course had a completely different innovation approach than the people from Rondeal. They had to change their perspective completely. They had to put the clients central and the needs of those clients, not their traditional aquaculture production. They were not improving their farms in terms of doing their aquaculture production a little bit better. They were doing something completely new, namely care farming. They needed new partners, and they really needed to understand them. What were their values? What makes them tick? What are the things that they are concerned about? And for instance, one of the things that the care insurers were very concerned about is, of course, quality. You can have maybe 5 or 8 care clients on a farm, but a city the size of Amsterdam would need a whole lot of farms to be able to meet the demand for these types of care. And it would also mean that it would involve quite a number of farmers. How do we ensure quality with such a large group of farmers? That is where Landseide as an organization came in, and they invested heavily in quality control and education and training. It also meant that one care farmer is a hobbyist. The network of care farmers organized by Landseide, that really is a business. It also meant that all the farmers themselves didn't have to do all the bureaucratic things. Landseide took care of them, so they could really focus on keeping their farm running, because that was still critical, and taking care of these care clients. and they needed to invest in professionalism, in training, and in quality control, as I said. But a completely different approach than Ron Deal, where they were looking at value adding. They were looking for accessing a new market. I'm not going into it in the depth of we did in Ron Deal, but I did want to share with you that this is a completely different approach. The third approach in Transform were projects like our project New Mixed Farm, project Greenport Shanghai, and a project AgriPort A7, where they were not adding values to an existing product to be able to sell it for a higher price and market it for its sustainability performance. They were not looking for creating a new market, but they were trying to create an economy of scale, making it possible to invest in sustainability. And their approach was, we need to scale up, because that will be our way for us to close the loops in our production process by using the rest and byproducts of one production unit and use them as inputs for another one. That was an approach, scaling up, that was central in another third of our projects. Again, there is a clip on what we call agroparks. I again want to ask you to use that YouTube link in the notes box on the lower right side, and watch that video again, 6 minutes, and then we'll talk briefly about our agroparks, and then I'll conclude this session. So again, please watch that video and let me know in the chat box when you're done. Okay, I again see that almost everybody is done watching that final clip about agro parks. I can imagine that some of you might not feel comfortable with the large scale that is central in this innovation approach. But of course, when you're talking about feeding large metropoles, we as Transform always felt that we needed to look at small scale and large scale projects, and at high tech and at high touch projects, and use that diversity to come up with a whole palette of innovations that would help make our metropolitan environments more sustainable and our metropolitan food system more sustainable. So we explicitly also looked at large scale. But what is very clear from these type of innovations and this innovation approach, that approximately how large? Well, this is 40 hectares AgriPort A7 that you see in the video clip, and this is really, Catherine, you were in the the tour, and we drove you around in the Netherlands, so you've seen our high-tech greenhouses, and that is the kind of greenhouse production there. And thank you, Renee, for your comment there. Back to the lessons for the innovation approach for scaling up. Even though this approach is heavy on technology, it isn't everything there. The key there, and the key in all our projects that worked with this innovation approach, was how to embed this technology in your social, physical, and legal context. And I briefly mentioned the project New Mixed Farm. I think that's still a very interesting project from the Transform portfolio, but it's also a project that has still not been realized because they are still struggling with both getting legal approval for building this project, and getting enough social support. Because what they did in this project is they said, well, the farms from 40, 50 years ago, they were almost all mixed farms. They were small farms where a farmer had some cattle, grew some crops, did some composting, and really had his own little circular economy there. And with all the modernization in agriculture, we lost all those connections between these different type of productions. And New Mixed Farm said, we want to go back to that idea of linked production. We want to combine a high-tech greenhouse with a high-tech laying hen farm and with a hog raising farm and with agriculture and with energy production, and we think that we can close the loops, but it required spatial clustering, and that meant that farms would have to be relocated, opening up a space again for nature, for instance, but also meant that this new cluster of farms, this new mixed farm, would be built somewhere, of course, and there are always people living nearby in the Netherlands, and they feared the size of the production, the number of traffic, but also the number of animals that were supposed to be in that. So even though they can organize everything on a technological level in that project, and they have a technological answer for every possible problem, there's still not enough social support to get it organized, and because of that, even the legal approval is still pending. Another critical lesson is scaling up, in our view, has a lot to do with bringing different type of production together and using the rest and byproducts of one production unit as input for another. But that creates interdependency. The really interesting challenge is who is responsible for that more than the sum of the parts. And is it okay for someone with a pig farm to be dependent from his neighbor who has a greenhouse for all the biomass that he needs to feed his pigs? Or will he start looking for his own channels to provide him with a much more stable, maybe, inflow of materials? So creating interdependency, that's a challenge in itself, and who is then responsible for that more of the sum of the parts? That is something that couldn't be addressed in the traditional business models of the farms, for instance, participating in new mixed farms, or the companies working in that AgriPort A7 that you saw in the video clip. So it really required new business models, so a lot of new orgware questions, that were also able to deal with this interdependency, and also with a new type of revenues, because for instance in AgriPort A7 the companies together produce energy. All their biomass is being transformed into energy. Well, what part of that energy goes to the greenhouse farms, and which part goes to the aquaculture farm there? How to come up with an equal sharing of those revenues? Those were key questions in scaling up. So even though technology was critical, there were a lot of questions surrounding the involvement of other stakeholders, especially citizens in that social context, and with lawmakers and bureaucrats. There were a lot of questions regarding the organizational model, building trust in that new company. So again, this different innovation approach required completely different things in terms of planning and implementing this project. If we look now at the Innoversity innovation scope, we have touched upon 3 of the 4 quadrants. And I see Rashad saying having multiple. That's technical. We've touched upon now on 3 of our 4 types of innovation. Innovation for higher value, the top left quadrant, that is talking about Ron Deal. Market invention, green care. Scaling up, That's our AgriPort A7 story, and the new mixed farm. But we've seen many examples when we traveled the world and visited you in your own cities for each of these types of innovations. If I think about market innovation and scaling up, I think about the Sky Green farms in Singapore, for instance, and we've seen examples in Sao Paulo for higher value. So there's a lot of similarity and